Night and Day, Jacob and Renesmee by Ka Lee. Chapter 8. As One. Nessie was truly being gracious and taking care of me. She never left my side. She had prepped all my favorite meals and surprisingly even enjoyed some of the dishes. We talked throughout the whole day as if we had so much catching up to do. Nessie took the time to read to me some of her favorite classic novels. I was never into reading, but when she read out loud to me, my mind was deep into the stories. I quickly recovered within a few days and wanted to start our life as husband and wife. We hadn't planned a honeymoon since the wedding was put into place so quickly. Edward had offered us a trip to Fiji for the week, but Nessie insisted she just wanted to remain in La Push. She had never explored La Push thoroughly since Edward and Bella wouldn't allow her into the lands. I was fine with it, but Edward didn't want to take any chances with his daughter, especially after the incident. Now that Nessie was my wife, she was provided with full protection from the Quileutes. We arrived at a secluded area of La Push. It was located off the coast and on a cliff. It was where I went to collect my thoughts. I wanted to share with Nessie where I did most of my thinking about her. The evening scenery was perfect. The forest air was refreshing, but most importantly, the smell of Nessie beside me was all I needed. The campfire was lit for lighting, though we didn't need it for warmth. The campsite didn't look like a regular camping ground after Alice had found the location. She wasn't too thrilled about the idea of camping for our honeymoon, so she made sure we would be as comfortable as the Ritz. Alice somehow managed to bring a huge king-size bed to fit in a tent with ample room for a dresser drawer for our clothes, a generator for the lights dangling up on the ceilings, and a refrigerator supplied with food and drinks. On the bed, Alice meticulously placed chocolate-covered strawberries on what looked like an expensive platter. The bed looked expensive, and I'm sure it was worth more than my father's house. I was too scared to touch its delicate hand-sewn threads. Alice even managed to place a wooden board on the floor to cover the whole floor and place a plush, soft rug. She really outdid herself again. Nessie couldn't believe it either when she first arrived here. She was going to give Alice the biggest hug ever once we headed back home. As long as Nessie was happy, then so was I. We stepped back outside and sat near the campfire. Nessie placed her hands on my arms and glared into the fire. She was concentrating on something. What is it that you're thinking about that has you in a daze? Jacob, this is wonderful. I can't imagine a more perfect scenery here in La Push. How often do you visit this place? I only come here to relax and clear my thoughts. No one knows about this place but me. Well, besides Alice now too. I made it my own hiding place. I'm just glad I'm able to share it with you. It's definitely breathtaking. I looked at her as she looked out into the ocean. The color of her eyes glistened and reflected the moonlight off the ocean waves. I placed my hand on her chin and whispered, "The only thing breathtaking is right here in front of my eyes." I leaned forward to kiss her. I parted her lips so I could taste her. She was warm and sweet. I pulled her on top of my thighs while she straddled herself around my waist. Her arms swiftly went around my neck. I was looking up to her while she pressed her breast against me. She came down to kiss me, and I returned the favor. She placed soft kisses around my neck, which left me weak. Her hands went up to my neck and danced its way through my hair. She slowly traced her finger around the bone structure of my face and placed a gentle kiss after each touch. She traced the scar where Bryson had attacked and kissed it as if her kisses would make the pain go away. Jacob Black, I love you. I love you, Nessie, twice as much. Please don't ever forget. I need you, Jacob. Please. I didn't want to object, as I needed her badly, more than the air I was breathing, more than life itself. I carried her into the tent. I placed her down on the bed and lightly pressed myself up on top of her, trying to hold my weight so I wouldn't crush her. My hands ran through her silky hair. For a brief moment, we stared at each other and understood what we both wanted next. Her hands lifted my shirt off, and the heat of my body warmed her. As I caressed her neck with my kisses, my hand found its way to undress her blouse. I gently massaged her exposed breast, pinching her nipple hard between my thumb and index finger. She responded by arching her breasts towards me. Her breasts were soft and perfectly round and ample in my hands. A small whimper escaped her throat. With my lips, I made my way down a trail from her neck to her breast. As I placed her nipple in my mouth, she called my name. With each moment I sucked her nipple, she tasted like sweet honey. My right hand found its way to her inner thighs. I felt the soft hair and rubbed my palm beneath the soft curls. It felt so warm. I carefully massaged it and let my finger gently find its way in. It was heaven. She was so warm and ready. Within an instant, I had removed all of her clothing. I stopped for a minute and with my hands studied her every curve. Her ivory skin was exquisite and felt like nothing but pure silk. You're beyond beautiful, Nessie. Little by little, I trailed down to her breast with my lips and made my way down her inner thighs. I kissed every inch of her. With no hesitation, my tongue made its way, tasting and teasing her there. My tongue then slowly penetrated into her. Her desire for me was so delicious, and it enticed me more. She inhaled a deep cry. I wanted to hear more of her satisfied cries, so I didn't stop arousing her with my tongue, making sure I would taste every drop of her sweetness. Jacob, please. She called my name again and bit her bottom lip with each stroke of my tongue. She looked tormented, and I loved how her face winced, but I knew it was out of pleasure and not pain. I deviously watched her body react to each playful kiss down her. Her hands helplessly tugged on the bed sheets. My mouth followed up again to her breast and sucked on her other breast to taste her more. Her nipple hardened with each moment I placed my mouth over her breast. She arched her back again as a sign of pleasure and inviting me to never stop. I stopped to gaze into her eyes. The colors of her rosy cheeks were turning a shade I've never seen before. Her eyes were speaking to me and pleased in every moment we were sharing. Nessie, I want you. Then take me, Jacob. That's all it took as we shared a deep, long kiss. I wanted her to taste how exquisite she was in my mouth. I could tell she liked it by sucking hard on my tongue. I wanted her to know that I could never get enough of her, never wanting to separate myself from her. I was hot and ready for her. She slipped my pants off and stared at what would be coming. She seemed worried, yet pleased. To my surprise, she grabbed it with both hands, squeezing hard and pulling me up and down. I took in a deep breath of air as a sign of pleasure, and from the back of my throat, I let out a moan. It was torture with each grip. The sensation was unbearable because I couldn't wait any longer. If I didn't take her now, I was going to explode in her hands. Nessie, please. You're going to make me come, and I'll be damned if I don't get to come inside you where I naturally belong. She smiled. Surprised by my demanding voice, she let go of me. I honestly didn't want her to let go, but with a swift, calculated move, I laid her flat on her back and parted her legs with my knees. I then stood up and stared at her with her legs wide open, willingly for me. Her face blushed, knowing I was staring at her. She embarrassingly turned her face away from me, but I could still see her eyes through her thick, curly lashes. She was all for me to take now. I could stare at her in this position all night, but I desperately wanted to be in her, to claim her as mine. I placed myself on top of her. With my hand on her chin, I turned her to face me, all the while never leaving her eyes. I want to remember your lovely face as I take you as mine. She nodded her head. I loved when she listened to me. With as little pressure as I could, I slowly penetrated myself deep into her. She let out a pleasurable moan as I became one with her. She tilted her head back and bit her bottom lip. I followed her and bit her lip, then deepened it with a kiss. She was so tight and tender. The warmth of her around me matched up with my heat. She was the perfect fit for me. With each stroke, I lost myself deep within her. I buried my face in her hair. Her hands stroked my back. Her nails were digging deep into my skin as I moved in and out of her. She wrapped her legs around me, and her hips moved with my every motion. It was undeniable that we were made for each other. We shared another passionate kiss as I kept on pushing myself deeper into her. Her soft whimpers of pleasure tormented me. The feeling was sensational, and I never wanted to stop. We locked our fingers together when our hands met. I placed more kisses down her neck and behind her ears, where she let out another quiet whimper in agreement with where I had kissed her. I met with her lips again as I couldn't get enough of her taste. Our tongues danced, and I traced her lips with the tip of my tongue. She went in deep with her tongue in me. It caused me to react by penetrating more of myself deeper into her. With each penetration, she let a soft moan out. Suddenly, I felt her release. Her sweet juices were flowing and surrounded me. I've never felt anything more welcoming. Her face was even more exquisite as she came. Her whimpers were soft and pleasing to my ears. So beautiful, Nessie. So beautiful when you're coming. Our rhythm was in sync, and I pushed deeper into her. She was so wet and hot, it was driving me insane, and my heart was beating faster with each motion. Nessie. I cried out her name again as I reached my max. I released myself of this urge and sensational feeling. Within seconds, I lost all control. I felt myself consume her. My seeds went deep within her. With one last push, I went as deep as I could so all of me could fulfill her. I still selfishly wanted more of her. How could I never get enough of her? I gently pressed my whole body onto hers. I stared into her eyes and saw the raw passion that I had desired from her for what felt like an eternity. I didn't want to stop staring at my beautiful wife. Slowly, I moved my lips to her ear and whispered my feelings to her in Quileute. Jacob. The soft whisper that I rarely heard from her. Yes, my Nessie. My Jacob. Forever yours, Nessie. At that moment, Nessie belonged to me, and I belonged to her. That evening, neither one of us wanted to let go.